Good day, classmate. I am Jasmine Enrenta.
And I am John Sosa.
We are here to present to you the safety orientation made by Engineer Albert D.C. Evangelista. Before we discuss these different safety precautions done both inside and outside of the laboratory, I have a question. Have you ever seen an iceberg from top to bottom? If you don't know what an iceberg is, do you have an idea who these two outstanding characters are who were played by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet? You are right, classmate. It is the Titanic. In this movie, the actors and directors wanted to portray the love story of Rose and Jack when the Titanic ship sank in 1912. The Titanic was a British passenger liner, had its maiden voyage on April 10, 1912. The ship was the largest and most luxurious built up to that time at 52,310 t of displacement with a length of 269.1 meters and carries 3,457 passengers and crew. It struck an iceberg of Newfoundland on the night of April 14 to 15, 1912, and sank while carrying 2,200 people, with 1,500 people drowned. Titanic was traveling too fast for the known icy conditions. The large loss of life was partly because of the failure of a nearby ship, the Californian, to respond to the distress signals and the insufficient number of lifeboats on the Titanic. The Titanic ship sank because of the captains of the ship were unaware of the costs of accidents that might happen when they were traveling too fast. Just like an iceberg, the cause of accidents can be presented as an iceberg. The cost of accident have two costs, which is the direct and indirect costs. The direct costs are the costs that are usually obvious. It is usually the initial things that a person thinks about when they encounter an accident, while the indirect costs are the costs not usually seen or realized easily. The costs of accidents, both direct and indirect, are both important to help people be more aware of their surroundings and be safe in the future.
Now, let's discuss what is an accident and its different on incident. Accident is an undesired event that results in harm to people, damage to property, or loss to process. It is usually a contact with a source of energy above the threshold limit of the body or structure. While incident, on the other hand, is also an undesired event which under slightly different circumstances, which could have resulted harm to people, damage to property, or loss to process. Incident is also an undesired event which could or does result in a loss. And let's remember that an accident is always an incident, but an incident is not always an accident. Furthermore, let's now discuss what are the common sources of accident. The most common sources of accident includes people or man, equipment malfunction or machine, different kinds of materials, and environment or Mother Nature. Now, let's discuss what is hazard, risk, and safety. Hazard is a condition or practice with a potential for accidental loss, while risk is the chances of loss, and safety is the control of accidental loss. But what exactly is loss? Loss can be an injury, death of personnel or worker, property, damage, downtime, operational interruption, disruption, or business loss. In other companies, it can mean loss of information or erosion of reputation. In simple terms, loss of asset or resources.
After knowing what is loss, now let's look at the loss causation model. This model shows the continuous flow of loss before, during, and after an accident. The green box represents the before, the yellow box is the during, and lastly the orange box is the after. Now let's discuss it one by one. The first green box under the pre-contact phase is the lack of control. Inadequate performance, program standards, and compliance to standards are all things that we cannot control. Thus, because of this, we must maintain good work performance standards for the following: leadership and administration, management training, plant inspections, task analysis and procedures, accident or incident investigation, task observation, emergency preparedness, organizational rules, accident or incident analysis, employee training, personal protective equipment, health control, program evaluation system, engineering controls, personal communications, group meetings, general promotions, hiring and placement, purchasing controls, off-the-job safety.
Now, let's discuss the second phase of pre-contact phase, which is the basic causes. The basic causes includes personal factors and job factors. For the personal factors, it includes lack of knowledge or skills, improper motivation, physical or mental problems, and stress. While for job factors, it includes inadequate work standards, inadequate design or maintenance, inadequate purchasing standards, normal wear and tear, and abnormal usage.
Next is the immediate causes. These causes are the instances that can happen very quickly. Now, let's differentiate unsafe practices and unsafe conditions. Unsafe practices are the practices done by the people that are harmful, while unsafe conditions is the environment that puts the people in danger. Here are some examples of unsafe practices.
Operating without authority, failure to warn or secure, operating at improper speed, making safety devices inoperable, using defective equipment, using equipment improperly, failure to use personal protective equipment, improper leading or placement, improper lifting, taking improper position, servicing equipment in motion, horseplay, drinking, or drugs.
Now, here are some unsafe conditions. Inadequate guards or protection, defective tools, equipment, substances. Congestion, inadequate warning system, wire and explosion hazards, substandard housekeeping, hazardous atmospheric conditions such as gas, dust, fumes, and vapors, excessive noise, radiation exposure, and inadequate illumination or ventilation.
Unsafe practices does not only apply inside and outside the laboratory. Unsafe practices can also mean a person. Now, let's talk about symptoms of unsafe student behavior. Symptoms of unsafe student behavior includes resent and rebels against authority, does not concentrate, does not perceive the significance of orders, direction, and instruction, always talk when he should listen, does not face up the problems and take responsibility for his actions, cannot seem to accept and play the role assigned to him, does not respond to training, always self-centered and has no respect for the rights of others, doesn't adjust to changing situation and make decision, is a loner, go his own way with a minimum of ties and emotional involvement with other in the group.
And now, here are some symptoms of unsafe professor behavior. He fails to maintain firm understanding discipline. He does not play the role his responsibility as a professor demands. He does not face up the problem. He does not train students adequately. He fails to make decisions and to take appropriate actions promptly. He does not check students' performance so as to control it. He shows no sense of humor to drain off tension. He is unwilling to listen purposely and understandingly while students talk out their problems. He fails to check on an individual student capacity for maintaining his emotional balance under the stress of a particular experiment. He sets poor or wrong examples. He does not accept personal responsibility for safety. He fails to build and maintain good safety. He fails to observe and correct violations of safe working practices. And lastly, he is inconsistent in the application of safety on laboratory classes.
Now, let's go back to the fourth phase of loss caution model, which is the contact phase, where the incident happened. And now, here are some different types of incident. Struck against, struck by, fall to below, fall on the same level, caught in, caught on, caught between, contact with electricity, heat, cold, radiation, caustic, noise, toxic, or noxious substances. And lastly, overexertion or overload. The first type of incident is struck against. A striking against event occurs when there is a forcible contact or impact between an individual and an object or piece of equipment that creates an injury. The second type of incident is struck by. A struck by hazard refers to an incident in which a worker is hit and injured by an object, tool, or equipment. Struck by hazard are mostly related to improper material and equipment handling and poor housekeeping.
The third type of incident is fall to below. The point of contact with the source of the injury was lower than the surface supporting the person at the inception of the fall. Here are some examples. The fourth type of incident is fall on the same level. Falls on the same level are defined as a slip, trip, or fall in which the worker either impacts an object or the floor at the same level at which they are standing. Oftentimes, slip and trip hazards are the cause of these types of incidents. Here are some examples. The fifth and sixth type of incident is caught in and caught on. According to OSHA, caught in or caught on between hazards are defined as injuries resulting from a person being squeezed, caught, crushed, pinched, or compressed between two or more objects or between parts of an object. Here is an example. The seventh type of incident is caught between. Caught between accidents occur when a person is crushed, pinched, or caught between a moving object and a stationary object, or between two moving objects. These accidents can result in amputated body parts and even death.
Here are some examples of contact with electricity. Here are some examples with contact with heat. Contact with cold. Contact with radiation. Contact with caustics. Contact with noise. Contact with toxic substances. And 9. Overexertion or overload. Overexertion, also sometimes called ergonomic injuries, are injuries caused by one of the following factors: excessive lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, reaching, or stretching, repetitive motion, working in an awkward position, sitting, or standing for prolonged periods. And here are some examples of overexertion.
And now, let's go back to the loss causation model and discuss the last phase, the post-contact phase. In here, it discusses loss of people, property, and process. In people property loss, it has two components: physical harm and property damage. In physical harm, it can be an injury or illness. This includes minor, serious, reportable, compensable, disabling, lost, time or major, death, catastrophic. In property damage, it can be minor, serious, major, catastrophic. Note, classification of damage varies with locally established values. There is no standard. And that is all for the loss causation model. Now, let's go to the three stages of management of loss control. There is pre-contact, the before, contact, the during, and post-contact, the after. In the pre-contact controls, it can develop and implement programs and plan actions to reduce loss if and when contact occurs. In contact controls, substitution of alternate energy or less harmful substances, reducing the amount of energy used or released, and lastly, placing barricades or barriers between source of energy and the people or property. And lastly, the post-contact controls. It can implement emergency action plans, rescue operations, and salvage and waste control measures.
And lastly, before ending this video, I'd like to remind you that if you don't believe in safety and health, then try accident and illness. Again, I am John Versosa.
And I am Jasmine Anrenta.
Thank you for watching.